Today we'll be working with limited journaling supplies. Basically, a newspaper, some magazine pages, my notebook, pens, markers, binder clips, photograph, post stamp, fortune from a fortune cookie, a snack, of course. Oh, and a glue stick. I really wanted to stress here how you do not need a collection of washi tapes or a drawer full of stickers to journal. And if you do not have those things, and not having those things are the only thing stopping you from journaling, then I really want you to know that when it comes to art journaling, your creativity lies in seeing the potential in everyday things. And those are exactly the things that we're going to be using in today's journal. So just a disclaimer, I don't really plan my pages prior to shooting this video, so a lot of the things that we have here might not even be part of the final spread. So I have here a portion of the newspaper. I'm using the entertainment section. I think this one's about Hamilton that is going to be showing, or that is already showing. I'm sorry, I'm not updated here in Toronto. I chose this newspaper because I didn't want any mention of coronavirus, although that would be very timely. But most of the newspapers are covering that right now. I did mention in my previous video that I'm only journaling once a week. I didn't want to set myself up for failure when I went back to journaling, so I told myself an entry or a journal a week is perfectly fine. However, I did just turn 30 and I had some thoughts that I really wanted to put down, so I made a separate spread for my 30th birthday thoughts. I've never been really big on birthdays. Usually, I just have dinner with Kevin. It's always just an excuse for me to have good food, which I always find excuse for anyway. And I don't even recall the things that I did in my previous birthdays. It's because I just don't make a big deal out of it. But for some reason, turning 30 was something that I at first was looking forward to, probably like 6 months before my actual birthday. And then closer to the day, probably like a month leading to my birthday, I had a big Rachel Green moment. You know, Rachel from Friends when she was turning 30. I had that. I was looking at my life. I was looking at the last 10 years of my life, and I was wondering, how did I get here? How did I get here? And I didn't feel happy with where I am at 30 or at turning 30. I felt like I was in this conversation with 21-year-old me who was fresh from university, and I felt like she was looking at me with disappointment in her eyes because I wasn't who I thought I would be at 30. I thought at 30 I would be this successful person who has a successful career and a passport packed with stamps from all over the world. I would have a house, a family, children, and I thought that I would, at this point, probably won an award for poetry. I wanted to write poetry when I was younger, and that is what I went to university for. But obviously, aside from being married to my best friend, none of those things are actually happening to me at this age. It's funny because I've always felt contented with my life. I remember that for my 29th birthday, I wrote down that I feel this happy contentment that I thought was only reserved for old age. I was happy. I am in a happy marriage. I have family who loves me. I have friends who are there for me. I have a roof over my head. Have I said that already? I have a job that is not necessarily a career, but that supports us and that allows me to do the other things that I want to do, such as journaling or drawing. And those are the things that were enough for me. And all of a sudden, they're not. And it was such an awful feeling to be going through these thoughts in front of my husband, who was amazing and patient and understanding throughout all of it. And I remember speaking to my brother about it, and he told me to make peace with the decisions I've made in my life that got me here. And there were a lot of things that happened, from me graduating from university at 21 and having all these dreams to 29-year-old me turning 30 in Canada. I moved to Canada at 22 with my parents, and I watched as my dreams died one by one, I guess. I left everything I knew, all my friends, most of my family members in the Philippines, and it was a very difficult move. I went from an odd job to another odd job. It was a series of odd jobs. But it was here that I found Kevin, my husband, and that I found a passion for creating. And I had this dream of writing my whole life, but all of a sudden I had this new dream of doing other things, creating. There's calligraphy, illustration, all these ways to create that is beyond writing. And this is something that I never would have known if I had stayed in the Philippines. I realized that I was beating myself up for not being successful at a dream that I don't even have anymore. And that was an important lesson that I learned, that it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter if you're 25, 30, 40, 50. Dreams change. My dreams changed. And I always talk about how here in Canada, it's a place where you can reinvent yourself. People go to university at 50 years old because they're chasing a passion that they had probably when they were younger, or that they are only having now. It was much different for me growing up. I felt like I had always known what I wanted. And I felt like it was a lot of pressure to put on myself to have things figured out at an early age and to stick to it. Because obviously things around me changed. I moved continents. I left the life I had known for 22 years. What once was home is no longer home. I had to rebuild my life and kind of figure out again who I am, or what the things I like are. In the past, whenever I have this desire to try something new, I get this thought in my head that tells me, well, it's kind of late for that. I'm getting older. When I moved to Canada, a lot of people went back to school. I didn't. I felt like I already did that. I finished university, and look where I am now. And I thought that it would feel that way when I turned 30, that I would feel like, well, it's too late for me now. But once I've accepted that dreams change and things change, and I have been blessed so far. I've been so blessed. I realized that there is no such thing as too late. There's this funny fortune from a fortune cookie that it's not actually a fortune, that says keep your nose to the grindstone, which basically means, keep on working hard or focus on work. And that's a great reminder to work on figuring things out, and that even at 30 you don't have those things figured out. Slowly my negative feelings towards turning a year older, which sounds so dumb, went away, and it was replaced by this childlike courage to chase after my new dreams, or to figure out what my new dreams are. I think that we get caught up in accomplishments sometimes. We focused on what you've done so far and what you're still yet to do. Our lives are built off to-do lists and hoping to check off as many items on that list as possible, that it becomes more like a list and less like a life. Turning 30 brought light to the many ways that I have failed in life, but it also brought light to the things that actually matter. My family, my husband, my faith in God. It brought light to what I am called to do, which is to create. And it's just a very freeing feeling. I know now that all I need to focus on is becoming happier, healthier, and holier, which is really what matters. I went to confession the other day, and my priest shared this with me. And it's a quote from Pope Benedict XVI about finding joy. And I really wanted to share it in case, it's something that you also need to hear today and every day. Joy. Where does it come from? How is it to be explained? Certainly there are many factors at work here, but in my view, the crucial one is the certainty based on faith. I am wanted. I have a task in history. I am accepted. I am loved. Wherever you are in your life, I just want to remind you something that I also needed reminding a couple of weeks ago. Your worth does not rely on your accomplishments. It does not depend on the things that you have done or the things that you are yet to do. In spite of the things that you have done or the lack of the things that you have done, you are valuable, you are loved, and you are accepted. But there is also no harm in seeking a purpose in life, in figuring out what you were called and created to do, and to going out and doing it. So never stop dreaming, never stop believing in yourself, and always strive to be happier, healthier, and holier. Until my next video, thank you for hanging out with me and listening to me rant about turning 30. I hope that it wasn't too distracting, that it didn't distract you from the fact that you can journal with a limited amount of supplies. Thank you for journaling with me.